Hey guys, it's Abby from Homeschool with Moxie and the Homeschool with Moxie podcast. This is episode 253 of the podcast, where I talk to another homeschool mom in my state in Pennsylvania, Amy Snyder, and we discussed what I think some of you might find to be a really interesting topic, and that is homeschooling while house flipping. Now, let me tell you why I thought I would bring this topic and this conversation with Amy to you. All right. So, as homeschool moms, a lot of us are one income families, but in the side, while you're homeschooling, in your mind, a lot of you are thinking, how can I bring in side income to benefit my family, right? How many of you are thinking that? I know a lot of us are thinking that because we give up the ability to maybe work full time in order to stay home and homeschool the kids. That's not to say that none of you are working full-time. Some of you are working full-time already. But this is for those of you who are just the stay-at-home homeschool moms and you're like, but I really want to do something on the side to help the family. Okay, so keep that in the back of your head. So how many of you are also in the boat where you've renovated your own houses maybe? This is our story. This is as soon as we bought our first house, we bought like the most disgusting house in the neighborhood. And even family walked through it the first time and we're like, oh, this is disgusting. But we could see potential. And it was actually a really great way for us to get into the housing market at the time because we were in the greater Toronto area. We could never afford anything, but we could afford this really disgusting townhouse. And that's what we did. And I mean, that was like the start of it. Every house we bought the fixer-upper. We lived in it while we fixed it up, which is really annoying, but we did it. Well, now we're at the point in our homeschooling. I only have 2 kids at home. I've graduated 3. Someone's in high school, someone's in 5th grade. I have, you could say, a little more time on my hand because I'm not homeschooling 5 kids. I'm already doing a lot of things, but I am intrigued with property investing. And this is something I've been learning a lot about in the last 9 months. And while I've been learning about it, and we've actually taken steps, we've been to a foreclosure auction and actually had check in hand. We're ready to bid on a property and someone else, it kind of went too high for us. We've actually been ready to pull the trigger on a wholesale deal and buy a really dilapidated something and fix it up. We have worked with a realtor and actually been getting an offer ready when the guy pulled his property from the market. So I'm telling you, we are like been ready to pull the trigger on this personally for a while now, for like 8 or 9 months. And in that time, I've also been seeing Amy on Facebook because I'm friends with her on Facebook from Homeschooling in Pennsylvania. And I noticed that Amy Snyder, this is like her side gig on the side of homeschooling her kids, and they have another full-time family business. So she's a super busy mom and she's doing this house flipping. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I want to talk to Amy and pick her brain. So the reason I'm saying this is you might think to house flip, like to buy an ugly house, flip it and either sell it or rent it. You might think you need like this humongous gob of cash sitting in the bank. That's always what I thought too. Like, who can do this? Rich people can do this. No, you can leverage money, borrow other people's money in all sorts of ways, which Amy will touch on some of these. And then some of these things you're just going to have to research. We'll send you to some resources. We'll link below this video or listen in on this conversation with Amy. We will tell you of our favorite resources where you can educate yourself and learn. You don't need a gob of money sitting in the bank. So the way my husband and I are hoping to very soon buy a house to flip is to use a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Because we've owned a house, you know, we have like a lot of equity in our house at this point, and we can borrow against that to renovate and to purchase the property, to pay our people to do the work. So for example, I'm not going to go over there and replace the bathtub. No, I'm going to hire that out. The numbers have to work. I have to be able to hire all this out because I'm not going over there every day in my hard hat and demolitioning and like putting in a kitchen. We might do some stuff ourselves, but we are hiring it out. So if the numbers work, you're at home homeschooling. Do you see how this works? You're leveraging either a private lender or your home equity or there's like lots of ways to finance this. You are purchasing the property. You're paying someone to reno it because this is all worked into the numbers. And then at the end of it, you either are keeping it and then having a renter who's going to then pay your mortgage on it. If you want to refinance a new mortgage, you have a renter, or you flip it and you sell it and you get a nice little chunk of cash, and that's your income from doing all of that work to oversee the flip. Do you see how homeschooling can be the perfect thing? Like, you're already busy, but you have, Amy reminded me of this. Homeschool moms are very, oh, what are we? Scrappy. We work hard. We persevere. That's the whole reason I call this Homeschool with Moxie. You have to have Moxie. You have to be that mama bear. You have all that energy, that passion. You know how to work hard. You know how to be a problem solver. All these things that it takes to homeschool is actually what it takes to be a house flipper or a property investor. So you're not out there all day doing the renos yourself. You're homeschooling your kids, but you're like almost like the property manager, almost like the general contractor, right? You're overseeing all the crews. You're making sure it gets done. You're filling out the paperwork. You're buying the house. You're doing all that stuff, but they're doing the dirty work. And then you get the income at the end of like 3 months, and then you resell the property. This is a long-winded introduction to this chat with Amy. But the reason I wanted to explain it is why I'm thinking about this and why I thought a lot of you might be interested. I'm really curious if any of you are doing this already. Comment below this video. Or if you've never thought of it, but it intrigues you, let me know that too. I just think that a lot of homeschool moms can really help their families out financially by getting into investing. I'll just mention one other thing also. We have friends that have been encouraging us along this lines. They're a little older than us. Their kids are actually all out of the house, whereas we still have a couple at home. But they are getting into property investing because they're setting themselves up for their retirement. So when they're not going to work anymore, they want to be able to have these rental incomes coming in so they can feel free to go visit the grandkids and to be able to be grandparents, right? And not have to work until the bitter end. So this is like another thing. If you're my age and you're mid to late 40s and older, you might also be thinking of those things. So I know some of you are like in your 20s and you're just barely scraping by and able to afford your first house. There are options for you too. I can't get into it all now. I feel like all excited about this topic, but I would check out Bigger Pockets. They have a website, a podcast, and a million books that will take you through all the different ways, no matter what stage you're at, whether you have zero money in the bank, whether you have zero equity in your house, or whether you're like us and you do have some equity that you can leverage. They will show you how you can actually make money and help your family with investing in real estate. So that is all to introduce this awesome conversation I had with my friend Amy Snyder, homeschool mom who also does house flipping while homeschooling. And I'm just going to apologize ahead of time. My phone rang right at the beginning, so sorry about that. You're going to have to watch me probably jump out of my chair and try to answer it. It's a little silly, but just so you know, the conversation gets better from there. So enjoy this conversation I had with my friend Amy Snyder. All right, Amy, you are a super busy homeschool mom. So let's start right there. You educate your kids at home, but you're also running multiple businesses. So tell us just a bit about your family and the businesses you guys run.
Sure. So I have two kids. They are 8 and 9, and we own and operate a what consumes me full time, a business manufacturing automotive parts, focusing primarily on Ford pickups and Mustangs. We've done that since before we even had kids. My husband and I have been together for almost 21 years. High school sweethearts. Started the business shortly after college, and started a family. I had absolutely no intentions of homeschooling. I thought homeschoolers were crazy and weird. and and then I realized I don't want to send my kids to public school. COVID happened, and it was like God's way of saying, hey, you're not sending them to school. So they come to work with us every single day. And they have grown up in this environment, so they know nothing different. And then on top of that, I decided that they were born into this life, and they've only ever seen us like successful in this. They've never seen the struggles of starting a business. So I had this crazy idea that we would invest in houses and they would see the other side of starting a business and struggling. So thankfully it has not been a struggle, but I wanted them to see what life was like without just, growing up into this home where you have a successful business. Yeah. So that's part of how that transpired.
So I didn't realize you have been doing the homeschooling thing and running all these businesses always. That was always,
Yes.
you never had just homeschooling without doing the businesses. So that's really
Right.
cool.
Right.
Um, So I love the fact that I know there's challenges, but there's benefits too. So like the thing moms are thinking about is if they want to be their own boss, kind of do something like flipping a house or whatever. What are the biggest challenges you see with trying to homeschool too? Because that is the thing. Everyone's like, well, how do you make time for both? So what's your secret sauce there?
So, I ask for help.
Hmm.
That's part of it. I am not afraid to ask for help. So, my husband will step in and help with the kids, with homeschooling. We have like a structure, that I want them to make sure we always do English, math, reading. Those are the things that like those are like no ifs, ands, or buts. And then we, as they've grown, because we've been doing this since they were preschool age,
Hmm.
we've added in, history and science and writing and art and music and all of the things. So um, we've just added it into where it works in our lifestyle. Now that they're what would be equivalent to third grade, and backtrack a minute, they're both the way their birthdays fall, they are both third graders.
Mm.
In theory, the way that they would go to school. So now that they're that age, we've brought in some help. So my mother-in-law, like we built up the curriculum together. She helps, make sure that they are actually sitting there and they are actually writing. And if they are confused or something, but I am only, steps away. So that
Mm.
allows me to still sit there, be part of what's happening, and still be part of their education, but I'm not doing everything.
Mhm.
And that has worked wonderfully. So, and that also allows them to connect with grandma.
Mhm.
So, and then my husband, in the evenings will help with them. So we don't feel like, you don't have to get up at 7 o'clock and start school and finish by this time. It's like, okay, guys, well, you're waiting for dinner. Let's sit at the table and we're going to do math.
Mhm.
So
Or
definitely, sprinkling in those, moments of educating has been
yeah.
helpful.
So are you is your office, home office where you work, is it like at home or are you taking the
Oh
kids to
no,
work?
they're coming to work every single day
Okay.
with me. We're in
Okay.
a 65,000 square foot building.
Mhm.
So, and I did not like this is our space. I did not build a specific homeschooling room. And then the conference room became the homeschooling room. And then the conference had to find its own home. So we built a conference room separate to that. Um, but yeah, like I said, we just sprinkle it in.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to read to the kids at night, but we will
Mhm.
put on audiobooks, and now they're to the age where they're starting to read to each other and
Mhm.
taking turns and like almost popcorning, you know?
Yes. That's so
So
cool.
yeah.
You mentioned you wanted your kids to see like your day to day and stuff. Like what are the biggest benefits? How I'm sure your kids have been impacted in a positive way by seeing mom as an entrepreneur. So
Right.
what do you think are some of the benefits there?
So a lot of times I people will say, wow, you talk much older than you are. So that's kind of cool. And they're very mature for their age. And sometimes when you tell somebody, well, my kids are really mature for their age, they think, oh yeah, right. Okay. Everybody says that, but truly they really are. We get tons of compliments that they have a wider vocabulary. They know how to
Mm.
interact with adults.
Mm.
When we go out to dinner, they know how to order for themselves. They will, like the other day, my son said, Mom, are my eyeglasses in? I said, I don't know. Call them. Call to see if your eyeglasses are in. And he's 8. Most
Mm.
8-year-olds aren't calling the eye doctor
Yeah.
to see if their glasses came in. Um, so we're really trying to show them that like it's even if you are little, it's okay to be big.
Mhm.
Um, they've got a lot of responsibilities. We pay our son to help every day after he's done with school, and he helps pack orders
Mm.
for our customers. So they're learning how to read orders, they're learning how to read quantities. My daughter has like she will place our grocery orders for our building for like our staff and stuff. So they
That's so
help with catering orders, gathering orders and stuff. So
that's so cool.
yeah.
All right. So you've got multiple businesses, but I told you already, selfishly, I want to pick your brain
Yes,
about house flipping because
absolutely.
I just think like a lot of homeschool moms are looking for ways to, okay, like what can I do that'll bring in some side income? And I know this isn't for everyone. And I know that's probably not what most people imagine it to be, including myself, like we'll see,
Sure,
right? But
sure.
tell us about it. So some moms are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So tell us like what it is. And then like, do you think it's a good idea for some homeschool moms who are like self-starters, motivated? Do you think it's a good idea for some people to consider as like a homeschool mom side gig? What do you think?
Yeah. So, okay. So there's multiple ways that you can, let's start with purchasing. There's multiple ways you
Mhm.
can purchase a home. So you can buy them at tax sales. So we're both in Pennsylvania, so this would apply to both of us and maybe some other moms. But the county always does a tax sale. Usually it's towards the end of like September-ish, somewhere in that time frame. And those are for people that are delinquent on their taxes, their property taxes. The caveat to that is, while you might be able to get a really good deal on it, they oftentimes come with liens, municipality liens, for like maybe there's some liens from state or from somebody not paying child support. Because typically, if they're not going to pay their property taxes, they're probably not paying other, bills that they have associated with that house. So that's one way you can buy it. If you were to buy that, always recommend going with a title company that you trust to be able to do like a background on it, just to check the title, and look for liens. You can buy through wholesalers, which are going to be individuals who maybe find off-market properties that are saying, hey, I'm not interested in this property, but I'm going to sell it to somebody else. That person that's selling the house themselves, like the homeowner or whoever owns the house, they will work with a wholesaler, and then that wholesaler will just add a little bit more, and that's their wholesale commission that they get from that. Obviously, you can get on market deals. You can find them through Facebook Marketplace, some off market stuff, and then there's another way to buy that a lot of people don't know, and it's called subject to. And so that's been a little bit of a way that we've been doing it, some creative financing. So those ones are really nice for like homeschool moms, because typically those houses you're going to pay like a lot less of an entry fee to purchase that house. So, and a lot of times those are more turnkey. So, for example, a subject to home, it's going to be just a regular house that you find, and the person's usually upside down in it. They have a huge debt, like no equity, and there might be facing foreclosure. They might be relocating, and they bought their house, peak of the market in 2020, 2021. They didn't account for now their job relocated them, and they are moving, across the country, and they have to buy another house or rent another house. How are they paying this mortgage and this payment? So it's a way to find a solution for that person. And a lot of times they're turnkey. So you're able to get this house, maybe catch up some back, payments, maybe just take over the mortgage entirely and give them a little bit of money to relocate. And now you've got yourself a rental. And you haven't done anything. You've literally just got this house and you're putting a renter in it. Or it might be a very small flip. You're painting, you're ripping up carpets, putting new flooring in, and getting a tenant, or you're getting somebody to buy it. And, at that point, you're trying to recoup your money. But oftentimes it's harder because those ones, they have such little equity. When you're putting it back on the market, what equity is there unless you've done, some massive work to it.
So do you tend to resell yours, or do you keep most of them or all of them as for rentals?
So right now we're doing all buy and hold. And I've gotten everything from, I've done a couple of these subject to deals. And then I have gotten some that like are ugly houses. They have major problems. But every house we have bought has been a problem solving situation. So I've gotten them where the person is in foreclosure and we've saved them from losing it. And not only are we saving them from losing it, we're saving their credit. I've gotten one where the person was relocating for work, and he would have sold it on the market. He would have had to come to the table with money. So he would be basically paying somebody to take his house, where we were able to just say, hey, we'll take over your payment. Your interest rate is so low. We created a land contract. The house is still in his name until we, finish paying off the mortgage, which there is no end date to the mortgage other than the mortgage end date itself. And we did a little bit of renovating to it, a little bit of like cosmetic stuff, and we got a renter in that. Gotten houses where, like there was a divorce situation where it's like, they need to part ways, and they've got this house that's really holding them, together in their relationship, basically.
Yeah.
And those have been complete flips. And usually those are cash deals, because, when you're in a divorce, everybody just wants, let's split it. Let's get out of this. So we're trying to always find a way to solve a problem.
That's awesome. Now, how did you get into house flipping? Was it someone
All
you knew
right.
doing it, or how did that
So
even
so
start?
it started out as a joke.
Really?
So yes. So the first house we bought, we were selling our very first house, and one of my employees was wanting to relocate closer to work. And I said, I'll just use the money from our house and I'll buy another one. You can rent it for me. And that's what happened. That's really what happened. And it was actually
Wow.
a joke to begin with. And that worked really well. And then the second house, my grandfather passed away and my grandma didn't want to live in the house anymore. And so she was trying to figure out a way to get out of it. So we bought it and we kept the tenant in there. And we just did some cosmetic stuff to that one. And
Mhm.
then it just kind of like was a trickling effect, like, oh, this is
Yeah.
fun. Let's look for our next.
Yes.
So we love to do a lot of owner financing, where the owner is acting as the bank, and also these creative financing with these subject twos where we're helping somebody out of a situation.
Mhm.
And then we still do some cash deals as well, but um, not using all of our money allows us to be able to renovate and not feel like we're constantly like banging on the bank's door, like, hey, we need some more money over
Mhm.
here.
Mhm. So,
So,
okay, there's a lot of things like moms that are just like, okay, this is interesting. They're thinking about. So, number one, how do you find capital to start? Um, And I like, so what we're gonna do if we finally pull the trigger is like we have a HELOC, home equity line of
right,
credit. So like I'm thinking a lot of moms who have, maybe been a homeowner for 20 years or something, like you probably have some equity you can start with.
sure.
But some moms don't have that. What are some other options too? Like where do people find money?
So, okay, so for us, we just are fortunate that we have this business and we can pull equity from that and put it into like basically transfer from one business to the
Hmm.
next. Um, if you're going into a situation where you're going to help solve a problem, you can get stuff at low money down or no money down, depending on what the situation is. So if somebody is in a foreclosure situation where you only need to bring a couple thousand to the table, you might be able to use your tax return
Hmm.
on that. And then you're really just taking over their monthly payments. And you really have to make sure too that if their monthly payment is say 7,000 or sorry, 700,
Hmm.
and you have to make sure that the rents support that obviously.
Hmm.
Um, so that's one way, or doing like an owner finance situation where, I'm tired of being a landlord, just done with it. I'm ready to just give it over. When you do an owner finance deal as the seller, you're you're transferring it over to the new buyer, but they're making monthly payments. So it's still that passive income, but now the new person is responsible for taxes, upkeep, insurance, all the other things that you were burdened with before, which is a lot of time why you don't want to be a landlord. Like you like the passive income, but you didn't like the stuff that came with it.
Hmm.
So that's one way. Like you said, the HELOC is
Hmm.
another way. And then you can also, if you just want to kind of dip your feet in, doing wholesale, where maybe you're really good at, you're a good communicator, you're a good problem solver, and hey, I don't have the money to do this, but I can find somebody that will buy this. And so I'm going to basically put this under contract and give me 30 days. I'm going to find somebody to buy this and I'm not going to ask any money from you. They're going to pay me. And
Hmm.
usually they call that an assignment fee. You can get anywhere from 5 to 20,000 depending on the deal, where it's at. Places in Florida, some of the assignment fees are like 30,000.
Wow.
So it's
Mhm.
30,000 in your pocket and now
Yeah.
you can take that and put it to the next, what you actually want to buy.
Right.
So
So there are lots of options. See, at
tons.
first it doesn't feel like it there are, but
Yes.
there are. Okay, so what's the timeline for a typical flip if you have like an actual reno, not something that just needs a little bit of paint? Like what's your
All right.
timeline and tell us about how that works?
Okay, so I'm going to start with this house that we've got right now that we're working on. First of all, it took way longer than anticipated. This is our first like down to the studs. Like we literally all we had in there was brick structure.
Wow.
We replaced floorboards. We had termite issue
Hmm.
that had been taken care of as far as the pest portion, but not fixed.
Mhm.
um, so that was really like discouraging. It took the wind out of my sails. And I actually sat on that house for probably 9 months of just like, do I really want to do this?
Hmm.
Finding the right people, I think was what I needed because
Mhm.
we have the second business, or our primary business, we don't have time to be being the ones doing the hard, sweat equity.
Mm-hmm.
But timeline, aside from that, I would say was probably about 3 to 4 months. Um, and we probably put a lot more into it because I'm also paying labor. We're not putting the sweat equity into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then just trying to make sure that like sometimes it sounds really great, like, okay, I need windows. I'm just gonna go get windows. But you can't just go to Lowe's because this house I got is from the 1800s. Like, I gotta
Mm-hmm.
get custom made windows.
Mm.
So now I'm waiting, which holds, it's like a
Yeah.
trickling effect. Like this held this up and that held
Yeah.
that up. And okay, now we're reframing everything because this house isn't square.
Mm-hmm.
So, as long as you know that going into it, that like it's not a quick
Mm-hmm.
way to get money, then it's
Yes.
definitely it's fun.
Yes.
Fun. So
Now, you mentioned something like, see, and this is why my husband and I aren't scared of flipping because that's how what we did when we were newlyweds. We bought the ugly house on the block and we just,
yes.
and but we lived in it while we fixed. I'm like, this is not going to be as bad, but we don't intend to do all the work either. So you
Sure.
just mentioned, and this is what some homeschool moms are thinking like, wait a second, I don't have time to go do all the work. I'm homeschooling. No,
Right.
what explain how that works. So like as long as the numbers work, you can hire this out and it still
Absolutely.
makes sense. So you're
Absolutely.
basically you're basically just organizing the cruise.
Yeah. So you're just acting as general contractor.
Mhm.
So so what I did is I put an ad on Craigslist, which I thought was crazy. Someone told me to do that. And I had a ton of responses and I was very specific. Here's what I'm looking for. Here is my expectations. Here's how to apply. And it was like,
Mm,
send me over all of your, what you've done. I want pictures of what you've done and I want referrals. I want to talk to these people. Um, and I probably had about 45 responses that were like actually worth weeding through. Um,
wow.
Ironically, I didn't get anybody from there, not
Hmm,
because they weren't good, but I had somebody personally get referred to me and
mhm,
that worked. But
mm.
I got more responses from Craigslist than I did Facebook, which is not what I thought.
Yeah.
Um, so knowing that though, I would say um it is, as long as you know what you're looking for and you have somebody that can like for me, my husband, while knows how to do this stuff, he doesn't have the time to do it and he's also uninterested. So
Mm,
I just went looking at houses with my dad and was like, okay, what do you think this would cost? And now I'm starting to be able to just walk through them and say, okay, this is going to be like, $45,000 in flipping.
mhm,
Is
mhm,
this worth it?
mhm.
So, but the biggest thing is making sure the numbers work. And even if you find a house that say they're asking 50,000 and you're like, there is no way that I can make the numbers work at 50,000, offer what you think because sometimes you're the only offer that they get, or sometimes you're the only reasonable one. Like everybody
Mhm.
else might want home inspections and they don't want to deal with that, or
Yeah.
they know that it's not going to pass a home inspection. And so when we offer with no contingencies,
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, okay, they are saving me from dealing with this and all the other burdens that come with selling a house.
Yeah, like it's a win-win. We forget that we're helping the other person out too. It can be a
Exactly.
win for everyone. So, so how many do you like to do per year? Are you like, do you have a goal of like, we want to do this many
So
houses?
we currently own 10 and I had no goal. And the other day my husband said, well, we have 10, let's do 10 this year. So we're doing 10. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Is
and
it
we have
one at a time or
sometimes it just depends on what we have going on. Right now we
Mhm,
have three.
mhm,
And so I have the crew kind of split. The one main house that's gonna be take a lot of work, I have like a main contractor and he kind of gets his guys set up for the day. And then I have another one that is just literally sitting there waiting for an opportunity. I'm not in a rush. When it happens, it happens.
mhm,
And then the primary focus at the moment is we're working with our local like community action is what it's called, and they have a program for chronic homeless,
mm,
and it's typically single moms who have found themselves in maybe domestic violence situations or situations where there is a reason that they can't maybe have childcare and work. So they're just, they have this homeless problem and they've went to community action and community action houses them. So this house will literally be rented to our community action and then they are going to place they already have a family in mind. They're going to place this woman and she's pregnant and she has a little kid
mm,
and they will rent our house and so it's a guaranteed income.
mm.
Uh, it's a like a voucher program, kind of like Section 8, but they're going in once a month to check on the place. They're cleaning it for the lady.
Mhm.
And yeah, so we solved not only a problem for this was a foreclosure issue. So we solved the foreclosure issue for the original owner, and then we solved the issue for this chronic homelessness.
Is that a Pennsylvania program or just in your area?
It's in my area,
Okay.
but you might be able to find them like through like your housing authority.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
it just every
interesting.
housing authority has their own kind of
Yeah,
criteria. But
that's
yeah,
so
and
cool.
it's a community initiative for us.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, what do you think most people don't realize about house flipping that they should know before getting into it?
So usually takes longer than you think.
Mhm.
You never know what's behind a wall. And um sometimes sellers are sometimes sellers are wonderful and sometimes sellers are sneaky.
Mhm.
So there are things that you ask, but you maybe don't ask it the right way.
Mm.
And there's some things that they hide. So you just have to really go into it with an open mind. But so far we've had really good success. So I'm really pleased with it. And then just making sure that like all the numbers work. And it's okay. Don't be like emotionally connected to something. It's okay to say this doesn't work for me, like and walk away. At the end of the day, if you're flipping houses, chances are you're not living there, so you don't need that house.
Mhm. Yeah.
So knowing that,
Yeah.
it's okay to walk away if the numbers don't work.
Yes. Where did you educate yourself? Do you have some favorite resources, podcasts, and books?
Absolutely. So I love to follow Bigger Pockets.
Yes. Yes.
Bigger Pockets is great.
Yep.
I follow Jen and Joe Delafave. They do a lot of creative financing stuff. They have a Facebook group. I think it's called like Creative Finance with Jen and Joe.
Okay.
And then they have a podcast. And for that subject to stuff, Pace Morby.
Hmm.
He has a podcast and he's probably all over Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, like all of that. So those are
Okay.
some of my favorites. And they have a lot of like good knowledge, but Bigger
Mhm.
Pockets is probably like, the
Super
golden.
good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like once you do your first one, it gives you the confidence and you're a little less scared about like making the next purchase? Was
I
the first
think
one the
so.
hard? Well, maybe
The
not the
first,
first one wasn't your hardest.
yeah,
You
no,
had a
I would say
different
like
kind
the
of
first
story.
big flip is
Yeah.
probably the hardest.
Okay.
Um, it's scary because like when
Yeah.
you start ripping out walls and you're like, oh no.
Mm, yeah.
Like when you walk in and it's just a whole bunch of nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and then finding things like we knew that there was a termite problem, but we
Mm,
knew it had been taken care of, but we didn't know that it was to the degree that it was.
mhm,
That's scary, and you're
mhm.
like, okay, what is this now going to cost me?
Yeah.
But as you see it transform, it's really like powerful. It's magical.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
it's crazy to think that, you started from this and you ended up with that.
Mhm, mhm. 'Cause I guess
So
everyone's fear is, "I'm gonna walk into this and it's gonna end up costing me money instead of making me
yeah,
money," right?
yeah,
But like you said, if you know what numbers work, then
right.
just the numbers are gonna I mean, obviously, there's
Yeah,
surprises, but,
sure.
they should
And
work. So yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, and like learning how to comp is really good. Just like a kind of a takeaway that somebody can just take from this podcast is when you're looking at the numbers, you want to look at what did things around you sell for. So you can just use Zillow and look and try to figure out like where are main roads that kind of divide areas in your like if you're looking at cities, especially if you're not super familiar. You want to
Mhm,
look at like maybe stuff on that street or kind of a couple streets over, as long as the demographic of who that area has doesn't change a lot, your comp should be good. And
mhm,
then rule of thumb is to figure out, okay, once I buy this house and I renovate it and it's like similar, like pick 3 houses that would say be similar,
mhm.
and then figure out your average and then take that number and times it by 70% because that's really where you want to be and that's where you're going to make your money. You want to have a 70% margin.
Mhm.
So as long as the numbers work there, typically you should be good. And then also, make sure you have that buffer in there.
Right. So it's like the 70% of the what you can sell it for in the end,
Yes, yes, is
minus
where
my
you want to be.
repairs is
That's
what
where
I
your
can pay
number,
for.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
So they call that after repair value,
That's
ARV.
great.
So you want
That's
that to be
great.
70% when you're of what you have into it. So
Mhm. Yeah.
and
So
community banks are very helpful to get loans and
mm,
they'll do a lot more than like going to your Wells Fargo or something.
yeah. That's awesome. So like, what do you think are the characteristics of moms listening who are like, is this for me? Like, what do you think you have to, what does your personality have to be like? Or what is your, do you have to have a lot of time? I mean, not, I don't know. What
So,
do you think?
okay. I do most of my stuff through social media or through texting. I'm busy. I don't have time
Mhm,
to like make all these phone calls. Once I vet the actual house and make sure that it works, that point I'm ready to do
mhm.
um like the phone calls and really talk to people and stuff. But moms are really powerful and we find tons of time in the day to just take a couple minutes and just like scroll listings, talk to realtors. Like really networking is going to be the best thing that you can do. So there's tons of meetups. I'm sure you can find a meetup in your area. There's meetups online. There's online Facebook communities. Um, but yeah, I think as long as you can find those mom pockets,
Yeah.
like your kid is at, a baseball practice, like, okay, just take a couple minutes, or your kid's like practicing their handwriting. All right, just
Mm,
start looking, like start
yeah.
making some connections.
Right. And you have to be able to like figure out the next steps and like you have to be motivated on your own because you don't have a boss
Absolutely.
telling you to do something.
Absolutely. Yes.
So
Which,
that's
I
like,
mean, typically as a homeschooling mom, you're self-motivated anyhow. So
that's true. We maybe might be the best demographic for this. That's
yes.
kind of an interesting thought. You are
Yes.
correct. You are correct. Okay, so where can people find you online if they want to follow your adventures?
So we're on Facebook and Instagram. It's AJ Scott Properties. And we should have a website up soon, but we were working on that. We want to make sure that it's reflective of what we're up to.
That's awesome. And
So,
do you have any just want to leave us with like a final encouragement for the homeschool moms who want to do some side gig while homeschooling? What do you say to them?
you guys are more powerful than you realize, and we have tons of time in our day, just those little mom pockets. So take advantage of those. Whether it's flipping houses, selling cookies, like maybe just use that time wisely. So, and I know that you guys can all find it, and even if it's just like listening to a podcast, but try to take action with whatever you're doing.
Yes, I love that. I love that because it gets scary and you just want to learn all the stuff and never
Yes,
actually do
yes.
it.
And don't be afraid of, trying something. So
Mhm.
even if
Yeah.
it's just going to a meetup, sometimes meetups are scary because you don't know anybody, but just
Mhm.
go, see what happens.
Yay. Thank you, Amy. I know you're super
Absolutely.
busy, so thanks for talking to
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I hope you love that conversation I had with Amy. I hope it inspired you to possibly look into this if it sounds interesting to you. And if you feel like this might be a good fit for your talents and your passions and the time you have and your abilities, and maybe being able to bring in a side income as a homeschooling family. So be sure to check out the resources we mentioned, especially Bigger Pockets. They have so much excellent information. So spend a few months learning all about it. Check out the show notes where I will link to everything at 4onemore.com/253. And in the meantime, happy homeschooling.